Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
So the mustard seed is a really popular parable, but it's one of those that seems kind of far off and ephemeral, I think. It's hard for us to really grasp the concept of what exactly Jesus is talking about here. And the power of parables is that parables explain something, but they don't really explain them. They call us to a deeper exploration and deeper understanding, so we have to work to get there. And the beauty of parables is that every time you go to a parable, you'll find something new and different. And I think it's one of the most wonderful teaching methods, and Jesus uses it, and it's absolutely a wonderful way of going about doing it, because they speak to us in different ways all the time, and each one of us hears them a little bit differently. So there's a lot of power in the parables. But one of the troubles is that those parables don't always speak to you and to me a couple of thousand years later, because we're in a different time, we're in a different culture. Sometimes it's not exactly parallel. So we're thinking here, and Jesus was thinking over here. And I didn't mean that as in we think right and Jesus thinks left, so it wasn't political at all. Please, God, it was not political. I get in enough trouble for that. So the story of the mustard seed is one of those because we don't really understand the concept of mustard seeds in the same way. They're not, the yellow mustard that we use, it's American, it's not the same. It's actually turmeric and a few other things in there, but it has nothing to do with the mustard seed that we're talking about. The mustard seed that we're talking about, there is actually some debate still about what exactly mustard Jesus is talking about here. But botanists, because there are people out there who study this sort of thing, there is a very, very small seed, and so they're thinking, okay, it's probably that. The mustard seed that we're describing is, they probably would have planted it sometimes. It's kind of an herb sort of thing. It has a woody wood growth to it. It's scrubby, as in most things in the Middle East are kind of scrubby because, it's the Middle East. And there isn't a whole lot of water. So, and it gets, roughly here. And it is a pretty aggressive plant, but somewhat useful. Okay, so there's your botany lesson from Meg. Clearly, this is not my field, as you can tell. But I think it's important because the thing about the mustard seed is once it's planted, it kind of does its own thing. And you can't really control this plant. And it just does its own thing. So when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, how to explain a mustard seed? Anyone familiar with mulberry trees? Yeah, I know. Every gardener here is like, oh, mulberry trees. So I personally despise mulberry trees because they are the bane of my existence. I swear. They pop up everywhere. And if you try to pull a mulberry tree, it is impossible. You cannot pull that stupid tree. You can't. You can cut it, and then it's like, ooh, you pruned me. I'll grow some more. That's how they work. They're horrible. They're awful. And yet, the mulberry tree is quite aggressive. And when it grows, it produces this wonderful little berry fruit. And birds love it. God bless those birds, because then they go and spread some more. And then the mulberries just keep going, keep going, keep going. We have some mulberry trees because Meg does a lot of our gardening here. So we already know how I am with mulberries. So where the bees are, actually. The bees are kind of in what used to be a grove of something else, but is now a grove of mulberry trees. And my children discovered mulberry trees this week because, they were helping me in the garden. and they discovered mulberries. And I explained to them that they are edible. You can eat them. And then they came back purple. And all their clothes were purple. And they packed some to take home with us because, we don't have any access to mulberry trees, so we could never possibly get a mulberry fruit again if we don't take some home with us. And it reminded me of how much I loved mulberry trees as a child. I did. I grew up in the country, as many of you know, and obviously because my mother's bane of existence was mulberry trees, just as my bane of existence was mulberry trees, because they literally ate our apple orchard. I loved them because you would come across one and you could pick the fruit and they're delicious. And that is the image that I have of mustard seeds. Because for all of us gardeners here, how do you want your garden? You want it the way you planned it. I planted that there because that's what I want there. And I don't want anything else there because I paid $5 for that stupid thing on clearance at Lowe's, and it is my baby, and I'm bringing that thing back to life, yo. Okay, maybe that's just me. But we want it the way that we planned it. We plan it in rows, and okay, I don't plant in rows, but I try, and then other things grow up in my rows. But we have a plan, right? There's a way that this is supposed to be. There's a way that this is supposed to look. There's a way that it's supposed to be done. And these things get in the way of our plans. Stupid mulberry trees. And then they turn our kids purple, which makes laundry a nightmare. Guys, that's ministry. That is ministry. And that is the beauty of this gospel, because that is what Jesus is talking about. He says the kingdom of heaven is like you just go and scatter seeds. Nobody goes and scatters seeds. Any gardener here just like going like scatter the seeds. I don't care where they get. No, you don't do that. You plant it out because you want to get the most yield out of what you have. There's a reason that GMOs exist, and that's because we can get so much corn out of one tiny little stalk. And there's money in those tiny little stalks, guys. I come from a farm family. I know about the corn. So we have a plan, and there's a system because it's supposed to get the most corn or soybeans out of that row possible. You don't just go and waste those seeds willy-nilly. You pay a lot for those seeds because, they're genetically modified, and that's expensive. So, but that's not how Jesus works, and that's not how the kingdom of heaven works, and that's not how ministry works. And we're all like, wait, what? Because I spent a lot of my time in my life getting educated to do this. I know you wouldn't think that from meeting me, but I did. There's a lot of money and time in this. Crazy, right? But ministry, we as humans have this idea that ministry should be planned out, and we should be able to measure the yields of it, and it's going to look like this, and it's going to be in rows. Have you noticed you're in rows? We love rows because we can count you a lot faster if you're in rows. And because we're Episcopalians, y'all sit in the same spot most of the time. I know who's here and who's not here. Not because I take attendance, but because I can be like, oh yeah, that whole section was empty. I know they weren't there today. But ministry, we plan it out, right? We have committees, and we have commissions, and we have hierarchy, and we have these people who are in charge. We pay them a lot of money because in the church you fail up. It's kind of how we work. It's kind of how education works too. It's kind of how the government works. You just fail on it. And so we have people in charge of this. I mean, this is literally their job. We pay them a lot of money to figure this out. It's supposed to be done a certain way. And then God comes in and he ruins our lines. He ruins them because God is the mulberry tree of ministry. And we're like, wait, dude, I had a plan. There was a system. I got a degree. We put them all in rows. We told them how to do ministry. We licensed them. Who here is licensed to do ministry? It's called your baptism. Go out and do ministry. You don't need somebody to tell you and give you a piece of paper. It's called God already told you to do it. And you looking for a piece of paper is you looking for an excuse not to do it. But so God is the mulberry trees of ministry. And that's why this gospel is so important, because we as humans love to plan and have a system. And we love to be able to measure the results of our system. But we can't. That's not how ministry works. It's not meant for rows. It's not meant for committees. It's meant to be strewn out wildly. And sometimes it takes. And sometimes it doesn't. And you want to know what? That's not our job. Our job is not to decide whether or not it takes, and then if it doesn't take, maybe tweak it a little bit. That's not our job. That's God's job, because God harvests. Who goes out and harvests? God, not us. We strew those seeds around and see what happens. Because here's the thing, ministry is not something that we go out and do. It's how we are. Our very lives should be committed to ministry. Who we are and how we are, that is ministry. And that spreads everywhere, because that's how people learn about God. They learn about God via relationship, not from rows. Who here is in church because we sit in a row? Literally nobody. Who here is in church because you have a relationship that's important to you and it brings you back again and again and again because that's essential to you? That. How many of you realize that you are sowing those relationships? You don't do it intentionally. You do it because you love each other. Because relationship is organic. It's something that just happens. It's not planned. You don't go get an MDiv in how to be a good person and have a relationship with somebody. You get an MDiv so I can tell you how to sit in rows. And I can give you a theological excuse of why you're supposed to sit in rows. There's no theological reason for sitting in rows. It's just the way that I can get the most seats in here. Yeah, that's the real reason. There's no theological reason to this. The theological piece of this is the mulberry tree. The mulberry tree is crazy and wild, and we can't control it. In fact, it drives us crazy because it gets in the way of the things that we already planned. But the mulberry tree yields the seeds. The mulberry tree produces for the world. It produces the fruit. It gives shade. It raises chiggers. Stupid mulberry tree. God, I hate mulberry trees. It gives us a reason to buy more Tide. So here's my message to you today. Ministry is like glitter. I have daughters. There's a lot of glitter in my house. If you've ever worked with glitter, glitter is one of those things, you can't control that stuff. You don't even know why it sticks where it sticks. It stays in the most bizarre locations. You can't, you put glue down and then you're going to put the glitter on it and it's going to stay where the glue was, where you plan to put it. Anyone ever use glitter? Does it stay where you plan for that glitter to stay? No, because there is glitter in my house from 4 years ago. And I'm like, we haven't used glitter in months. What? How? No. But it's shiny. Right? I mean, who doesn't love glitter? Get out. If you don't love glitter, get on out. Because glitter's amazing. And it's super fun, right? I mean, it's pointless. And actually, I just read an article that's kind of bad for the environment, so that sucks. But it's super fun. But you can't control it. You use it, and you love it, and it spreads joy wherever it goes, but you cannot control it. And you don't know why it sticks where it does. You don't know why it didn't stick in the glue that you were supposed to be sticking it to in the first place. It didn't stay. Guys, that's ministry. We don't know why it works when it does work, and we don't know why it doesn't work when it doesn't. And we want to measure it. We want results. But those aren't ours to measure. And to be honest, the results really have nothing to do with us usually at all. They usually have to do with the glue and the glitter. And are the glue and the glitter supposed to be in the same place? But you want to know what? Sometimes the glitter goes where it actually needs to go. And sometimes the mulberry tree ends up where, we didn't want it to be. But maybe that's a good place for the mulberry tree to do it. So this gospel is not about our happy little rose. This gospel is not about how to be a good priest. This gospel is not about how to be a good parishioner. This gospel is about the fact that the way you live your life is God's glitter. Do yourself a favor and do God a favor and spread good glitter. The shiny kind, the pretty kind, and maybe an eco-friendly kind. I don't know if that's a thing. But here's the deal. Wherever we go, we leave some of that glitter behind. Ministry is not something that we do on a concerted effort. It is how we live our life. So, be glittery.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven.